Hello and welcome. It's a great day in Central Texas. I am here with one of our counselors at Counseling Solutions. My name is Richard Ellis, and I'm your host for this podcast. So we have Alan with us today. He's new to our staff, and I want to just talk with him a little bit and find out what he does and what his areas of specialties are, what his training is. And the reason we do this is because we want you, if you decide that you need some professional counseling, we want you to be confident that we're going to be able to address the needs that you have. So we hope that you enjoy this interview, and we'll just start. Alan, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I've got my Ph.D. in sociology from the University of Texas. I went there for my undergraduate and master's. I also am a pastoral counselor and was trained in Methodist Church as a youth minister, young adult minister, and then I worked at the Wesley Foundation for several years. So I've got sort of an academic background and a pastoral counseling background.
So with a PhD in sociology, usually PhD folks intend to teach.
Right, and I did actually. I taught up here in the local area at A&M. Still teach at Central Texas College.
Okay.
For their online programs and some.
So do you like that academic work, being a professor?
I do. I like the mix of being able to go back and forth between academic stuff and then helping folks one-on-one.
Okay. So a PhD in sociology, a master's degree in counseling?
No. The pastoral counseling.
Pastoral counseling.
Right. My master's was also in sociology and criminology. So when I was teaching at University of New Orleans, and you may have heard about a large storm that went through there.
What was the name of that?
Yeah. So
we kind of know a little bit about that.
So I got a job at a school, charter school in New Braunfels, working with troubled teens. Folks with most of our folks had criminal backgrounds. They've been thrown out of disciplinary placement schools, but they also had special education issues. So I sort of honed my skill working with kids that weren't having success in the traditional school environment.
Okay. So if you've got a child that's really struggling in school, what are the implications of that for those children, those families? What does that mean if you've got a kid struggling in school?
Well, of course, when I was there, you're working sort of ground level, and your biggest fear is that you're going to lose them, that they're going to, leave school and go to the kind of lifestyle that, might end up into, drugs and gangs and crime.
Mm-hmm.
So we were definitely sort of in the trenches.
Tough kids?
Very tough. A lot of North Side San Antonio gang members.
Wow.
But also,
and for those of you who don't know, gangs in San Antonio tend to be some of the largest in Texas and some of the most violent. They absolutely do. So you don't look like a guy who could relate to a gang kid from San Antonio.
Well, at first they had trouble relating to me and seeing me as anybody, but other than possibly their first probation officer, I'm sure I look like. But it's like any of the other relationships.
Did you wear a tie?
I stopped that altogether. Any of that
That's
sort
right.
of thing, I tended to walk that away and try to be much more accessible to them. But like a lot of kids that are working with, you have to build that relationship up and let them know that, you have their best interests at heart, that you're not going to go away the first time they have, some emotional explosion, or the first time they curse you out or whatever.
And these kids typically have some mental health issues?
Well, a lot of them have learning disabilities that are either as a consequence of, let's say, an emotional disturbance or emotionally issues, family issues, or they get really frustrated very easily because of their learning disabilities, and they don't feel that school is their success place.
Sure.
I think sometimes we all forget that if you had a good time in school, that was like a success place for you.
Right.
What if you were forced to go to a place that was like the worst, most unsuccessful place for you?
Didn't want to be there.
Didn't want to be there. So we had to actually restructure the entire learning environment. We gave up homework, we gave up all the traditional things, and really sort of built the school back up from scratch.
Can I go to that? No homework?
Right.
Wow, let's go.
Right. But then there was a lot of focus on making sure you got it done in class.
Sure.
We also tightened up the times for attention span issues.
Okay.
Because
so when you say learning disabilities, what are some of those?
All right, so everything from dyslexia to dysgraphia, which
dyslexia is now that's kind of professional language. I think a lot of folks know about dyslexia, but I'm not sure folks know about dysgraphia. Translate that for us.
So if you have trouble reading and seeing the written language and being able to sort of cipher that in your head and understand it.
Dyslexic folks, do they switch letters or? Actually, how is that? That's what we hear most often.
That's the common terminology. Most of my kids described it as looking at a page of just squiggles. In fact, actually, we had a learning exercise where it was just a page of squiggles, and it wasn't language at all. And they said, I can't really tell the difference. Like that's what it looks like to me.
Kind of like Greek.
Yeah, exactly. If you just got
or Hebrew.
Or a different alphabet. And the dysgraphia is being able to not having difficulty with numerical representations and
so these kids are behind in reading.
Oh yes, they were behind in reading. But what I found interesting was if you met them where they were at and you didn't use a sort of traditional there's a lot of implied shaming in school, like, oh, you're not up in grade level and there must be something wrong with you. So we went through a lot of, hey, listen, you haven't got it yet. You're going to get it. You just haven't got it yet. And nobody that I worked with was the infamous, lost cause. If we could get them interested in school, no matter where they were at, no matter what family difficulties or learning difficulties they were having, we could get them.
Yeah, these are special education kids.
Yes, most of my folks had special educations.
So when are folks usually put in special education?
Well, usually you don't get tested for that before second or third grade.
That's right.
And there's a very healthy debate within my education colleagues about whether that's appropriate or whether we should be doing it sooner. I'll leave that to them. But by the time we got them in our school, went from fifth grade to high school. By the time we had them, they usually had a diagnosis of something. And then we would try to...
Dyslexia or dysgraphia.
Right, but also we had kids with head injuries, kids with problems from fetal alcohol syndrome. We really did have the gambit for a very small school. Because again, we were getting all the folks that not only did they not have success at a local public school, they'd gone to the disciplinary schools and hadn't had any success, and then came to us. And our goal was to try to keep them in school and keep them out of...
So you guys were kind of the last resort. If they didn't do well with you...
Many of them went to the Texas Youth Commission in jail. If they failed out or were bounced out of our school, that was their next stop.
Okay. All right. So dysgraphia.
All right, so in that you're having trouble with numbers, numerical representation, but also imagery representation. Images aren't necessarily working well for you, like you're not getting spatial relationships at times, and that kind of being able to represent that for tests and so forth. And that's the other thing that we found was that our kids weren't good test takers. Test-taking anxiety.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we don't really talk about, but even in my work with adult learners, if I could find a magic wand to work with that, I would consider that a life well lived, because test-taking anxiety keeps a lot of people out of education that should be doing education.
A lot of ADHD kids as well?
A lot of ADHD kids, some on meds, some without, but we realized that the average attention span of an adult is maybe 8 to 10 minutes. For a kid, it's 5 to 6.
Under best of circumstances, and with a younger kid, even less.
Younger kids with these diagnosed issues. So we, again, working backwards with the curriculum, had to figure out a way, okay, how do we keep things doable, assignments accessible, assignments that you could do within 4 or 5 minutes. So we had a copying bill that was rather large, but we went away from books and we kept assignments. Again, we built it all the way up from the ground up, but that experience basically the kids helped me figure out how they learned and how to get them success, because that was the one, the one sort of counseling constant that was there, is if I can get you to have even a little success, I can start turning you from thinking school is this terrible place that you're never going to feel at home into, to someplace it's not so bad. Hey, maybe it's okay. I can have some success here.
Well, with a PhD, and my guess is that you weren't one of those kids that thought school was a terrible place. You probably liked it and were good at it.
I liked it. I was good at it, but I went through a behavioral period. We'll just call it that. When I was in high school. And in that case, I was able to relate to kids that just didn't want to follow the rules. That just didn't, what rules?
Alan, surely not.
Oh, if only my parents were here, they would be able to tell you the story.
But you don't share that with your clients, right?
Not often, no. But I do have to say that, when you've had success in a school environment and you're trying to relate to kids that don't, it helps to have at least a period of time where you're like, school wasn't successful. School was down on me, maybe a lot for my own activities, but still, school wasn't successful. And what was that set of experience that turned that around? And how can I,
something did for you.
Right. And how can I use that to try to relate to a kid who feels that, this is just another step in a chain that hasn't worked for them. And that's something that
ends up in a bad place when they're a young adult.
Right. And, the school hasn't worked for them. Their parents are upset. Everyone's angry with them. So, they're very defensive. They're very upset. How do you take a kid there and try to get them interested in moving from that place of being very defensive and very upset and not having success?
Yeah. And one of the questions I ask almost all of our folks is, what was your success rate? Does it work, and how often, and what's that like?
Well, our school was about 120 to 150. We had our first class was 17 seniors, of which we got 15 to cross the stage. And these are the kids that, now I'm saying that we helped them across the stage. You bet you we did. We walked.
You pulled them across.
We worked hard with those kids. But, that was the benefit of, you're talking about the most difficult of the difficult learners. And if we didn't get them that high school education, what was going to happen next to them? Really, what were we assigning them to? So we knew how important it was. The parents understood how important it was most of the time. So, we did a lot of stuff where we were working at assignments and going through alternative testings and trying any way we could to keep our students interested. And 15 out of 17,
that's great.
That was a good game.
And so you still work with troubled kids, counseling. You're not doing the education stuff right now, but counseling.
Counseling, but I think one of the things that I can offer folks that might be having this issue is if your student is having behavioral issues and learning issues at school. The traditional method is to separate those two and take learning in one thing and the behavior in another. And I find that actually you can combine that and actually succeed by saying, let's try to get you some success in both arenas.
Sure.
Because
they interact with each other, they impact one another tremendously.
Absolutely, they really do hold hands to create either success or difficulty.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So what other areas do you specialize in terms of your counseling work?
In my counseling work, family stuff, individual stuff, obviously grief therapy. I worked at Hospice for about 10 years.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. Family therapy.
Family therapy.
So you have the whole family in the room together?
Actually, in that case, it's mainly working with families with troubled kids. I should probably.
Okay.
So often that dynamic. You have to have the whole family there to help to have a child succeed. And sometimes a child having difficulty has created problems beyond that arena.
So if you've got one child in the family who has a behavioral issue or a learning issue and they're acting out, how might that impact other family members, even the other children?
Well, often the other children have what's often called the prodigal son thing, where they're like, Billy's acting up. He's getting all the attention. He gets to go do stuff. He gets to get out of school. I'm towing the line, and
I'm the good kid.
I'm the good kid. Where's my special attention? So
Sure.
often other family members feel resentful and upset
Because this kid is taking all the time.
and all the attention. Because I think in families sometimes we forget that attention is sort of a resource. We tend to divide it up in good and bad, but often kids just want attention. Any kind of.
We'll do anything to get it.
Absolutely. And so if I'm the good kid and I've been trying to toe the line, but Billy's been acting up and been getting all the attention, maybe I'll start slipping. Maybe I'll start acting out in a different way.
Yeah.
Or feeling very resentful and upset.
Sure. I'm sure you're familiar with Adler's goals of misbehavior. He says children, and by the way, it's probably not just children, maybe adults too, misbehave for one of 4 reasons. And if you can figure that out, then you can figure out what to do. And that's attention, power and control, revenge, or because they believe they're inadequate.
Right.
Now, with your kids, was it mostly one of those or all of those?
Usually some combination of those. And what I found the most difficult, oddly enough, was when they felt neglected and that they weren't adequate. If a child is being yelled at or whatever, at least they're having interactions with the parents.
Sure.
The most difficult cases that we had were parents that had basically dialed out of the child's life.
Yeah.
They dropped them off at school and said,
Didn't know
"Good luck."
what else to do.
And then, we had to try to build that child up.
Okay.
And that can be real difficult because kids cipher a message. They get a message of, I either count or I don't count. I matter or I don't matter. And if I don't matter, then there must be something wrong with me. And then school's giving me that message too.
Hard to change that message when everybody's telling you that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's little bits at a time,
Okay.
I remember we had one kid that was very, very, very problematic in class and would throw things.
I
And
bet that's an understatement.
would throw things and was oppositionally defiant. And we first started with, okay, 10 minutes in class. You made it 10 minutes in class. All right, good. Come on out. Sit for 5
Tomorrow
minutes.
is 12 minutes.
Yeah, and literally that kind of thing, which I know, and for all of my educator friends, I know that in the traditional education environment, you're not given that opportunity to work that one-on-one. I was glad that we had that small setting to try that out, but we did have success. Hard fought, long one,
Worth it.
Absolutely. All the kids that were there were worth it. It's just if you don't fit into the normal education stuff, or your family's having difficulties.
And I bet it feels really good to take that one kid, and maybe more than one, that you know isn't going to make it, and watch him walk across the stage. That must be awfully rewarding.
Well, I know that being able to help them succeed in education, having that high school diploma, for a lot of us, we've forgotten. People say, "Oh, it's not really worth anything." It is your entry ticket to so many
things,
so many opportunities in life, particularly employment opportunities, that we forget. And then when you don't have that, then it's below service sector jobs. I mean, under $10 an hour jobs for the rest of their lives.
And that generational poverty tends to move on.
Right, and then then they're having kids and having problems.
Sure.
Right afterwards. So we did have some success. Very, very proud of that work that we did. And when I left that school, it was defunded because of our fantastic education funding decisions in our state. We closed the doors, sadly. But then I took that and I moved to Austin and I started working with kids that were having the same kinds of problems. Kids that, let's say, had auditory processing issues,
Right.
And actually I worked with kids that had some spectrum disorders,
Sure.
working a lot on social behavioral issues.
Right. So if you've got a child that you really struggling with, Alan might be the guy that you need to bring and come see him with those kiddos. Now, you also mentioned that you like working with families and couples.
Families, couples. My background there is Christian counseling. Now, most everybody hears that and thinks the next thing I'm going to do is give them a sermon, and that's really not the goal. Or
so, how does Christian counseling differ from traditional counseling?
Well, honestly, Christian counseling just employs the use of somebody's religious faith and background as another tool that they can use to help them over whatever difficulty that's brought them into the office. So if you're sad, or if you're having problems with your spouse or a family member, if you have a strong faith, that can be a common language to use among the other people in the family, particularly if you and your spouse, let's say, have a similar faith, and you can work on that and find some common ground, some common language using your faith connection. And while I use my background is Christian counseling, I was a hospice chaplain, so I've got Buddhist training, Hebrew backgrounds. I've been trained across faith backgrounds, so it's a tool that we use to get some common goals, some common language, because when you're having a family dynamic that isn't working, as we all know, one of the things that's clearly broken down is communication.
Sure.
Putting that back together can be really tough. You're literally arguing over about what words mean. So if you can get out of that and say, okay, we want to have a family. We want our family to be like blank. And if you can use the common language of a faith background where both people can agree on some goals and so forth, then
headed in the same direction.
Exactly. Then that's the goal. It's not so much being judgmental or being that kind of finger pointing or finger wagging, things that a lot of people associate with religion. It's more like, how can we use this tool to both build each other up and create some connection for goals and things.
So what about if a person doesn't have a faith background? How do you implement that?
Right. How do I do that? Well, and I would say probably more than half of the clients I've seen end up not really using their faith background that much, even if they have one, or they were raised in a church when they were 8 and they haven't done it since. And I'm like, that's fine. Honestly, I use sort of a cognitive approach where I'm like trying to get you to see whatever issues in your life and the goal that you want to reach. And again, I use a lot of social goal imagery to try to say, how do I get you from here to here?
Okay. So you don't impose your faith and that paradigm on clients coming in.
No, it's only a tool if the client wants to use it, and it's your tool. So it's not my faith that I'm trying to work with. I try to find out if someone is, let's say, been brought up in Islam. Then I'm going to try to use those tools, that common language, that goal structure that I know that has informed their lives, to help them reach their goals as a tool if they want to use it.
Okay.
But again, also, if that's something that someone is, I did that a long time ago, but I didn't really like the church and I don't want to use that tool, I'm like, I can understand that too.
Yeah.
But, finding the common language to talk about our difficulties, finding a common language to reach our goal, we're still going to do it. It's just one more tool in the bag.
I hear you talking a lot about clients finding client goals. Why is that important?
Well, I think particularly when you talk about Christian counseling, people think that you have a set of goals that I'm going to try to turn somebody into Billy Graham or something. No, it's
Amen.
Amen. I feel my job is to hear my client describe what problem they're having, what goal they want to reach, and then I'm there to help them, steer the boat, row if necessary.
Okay.
Help them reach that goal.
Their
goal, rather than me thinking, well, I have this or that, opinion about your life. That's not at all my goal. My goal is to find where you want to go, not to take you where I think things should go.
Sure. Now, you got lots of education experience. You mentioned work in hospice.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Well, when you've got religious training, people that seek your advice usually are, let's say church folks, or or they want you to get married, or you want to, christenings. But the other issue that our culture never discusses adequately is the end of life. And honestly, we leave that as a dark shadow in our culture where we don't talk about death, we don't talk about the implications, how one grieves, how one dies. So we've left it to the last part of medicine and religion. So because I had that background, I found myself being tapped or asked to become involved with grief and then hospice work because, well, honestly, a lot of folks, even in our profession, that's the thing that they would rather not do.
Absolutely. Now, for folks who don't know what hospice is or what a hospice person might do, tell us.
Sure. So if you received a life-limiting diagnosis, so in other words, the doctor said you may have on average less than a year or 6 months to live.
Okay.
You are then evaluated for hospice. And hospice mainly is delivered by private companies that are funded by Medicare to help somebody get medical service, usually in the home, but it can also be at a hospital or a nursing home. And part of that care is a nurse and a doctor and a social worker and a chaplain counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they favor that kind of counseling is because a lot of folks are using their conception of how the end of their life is going to be based up on their religious experience, even if it was when they left the church at 6 or 7.
Sure.
That's, again, religion is one of our only institutions that talk about it.
It still informs how they think and believe.
Exactly. And the kind of life they want to live until the end, how they want their end to be, and then also for the family members that are left, how do you put that back together?
Sure.
I use the term second responders. First responders are there during the emergency.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting the fire out. They're handling the crisis of the moment. Think of us as second responders, which then after your life has suffered one of these setbacks, we help try to put you back together and try to make your life more successful, more of a whole.
Okay, let me interrupt Alan and do a short commercial for hospice. When we lost my father 4 years ago, hospice was incredibly helpful to my family as we went through that process. My dad had lung cancer, and we knew he was going to pass, so they were very helpful to our family in that moment. A difficult moment losing my dad. So you plunge in there with folks when they're dying.
Well, yes, the patient when they're dying, and then the family members for a year afterwards. We're there.
So do they get better? Is the grief over in a year?
No. It also a lot of it has to do with the family member and the connection they had. I mean, we always hear about the cases where a couple's been married for 40, 50, 60 years. And one of them passes, and the next one goes really quickly.
Sure.
And we saw a lot of that, in which it's that inconsolable grief, but we still work to try to help that person, and sometimes we can actually even 50 years of marriage still be able to help them with their grief and find joy in life after that.
Wow.
A lot of it is also though when a family member who's lived a long life and has passed, it's easier to find, the joy in their memory and how that they impacted your life. And the family can come together a lot easier. When there's the loss of somebody younger, that hole and absence in there is much harder.
That's a much harder
grief
area to deal with.
And there you're talking years. And that's something that I am pleased that I have that skill that I can sit and
so you bring that to your counseling practice as well. So if someone is struggling with grief, they've lost someone, or they're in the middle of maybe losing someone, they can come here with you and get some help with that.
Absolutely. And grief is one of those things that our society, again, doesn't give us much help to define or to work with. I work with folks that have lost pets, and people think, oh, well, it was just a dog. Well, if the pet has been a part of your family for 15 years, that's important.
I don't think about Daisy that way.
Yeah. I've got my pet, and when he goes, I'm going to be a big old mess.
That probably says something about your heart.
I think that grief is something that we want to at times say, oh, well, we'll give you a day off if you lose a parent or something. And
one day off.
Yeah, which is our culture is incredibly callous that way. So I feel that it's sort of my job, since I can do that arena, to try to be more proactive, step in and work with folks that are grieving the loss of a marriage, grieving the loss of a child or a pet.
Lots of losses that we have to go through.
There are lots of losses that we go through. The folks that I talk with, working right up here at Fort Hood, loss of close friends while serving. At times, even loss of service itself. A lot of our soldiers come back and they have to grieve the loss of a career. Even if they've had 10 or 15 years in, that transition over includes some grieving that we don't ever talk about, which I think is a bit of a, again, it's a hole in our culture that I'd like to
now you've got those areas that you're really sort of a specialist in, but you can do all kinds of work with all kinds of presenting problems.
Absolutely. Anybody that wants to talk about personal issues, or again, I've worked with folks that have spectrum disorders. One of my clients was battling schizophrenia, and we spent a lot of time working again, not from a medication side, but how to work in a society that doesn't understand you.
Sure.
Getting social skills, being able to interpret social realities. We think of there being this one reality, and it's very much open to our perception. And what if something is interfering with your perception?
Sure. And we're going to wrap up here in just a minute. I usually ask this question: what's your favorite thing about counseling?
My favorite thing about counseling? I think my favorite thing about counseling is when I've had the opportunity to get somebody from that feeling of brokenness and despair about whatever, whether it's grief or a marriage or troubling circumstances at school, and getting them to a place where they go, I think I can do this.
I can make it.
I can make it. And they've done all the hard work, but it's at times a privilege to sit there and hold the paper mache and glue for them as they put it back together.
And the most difficult thing about being a professional counselor?
Particularly like when I was doing lots of work with hospice, the relationships you form with folks, you can't help but care about them, and when they pass, you're processing a lot of folks that have passed. But I also feel then at times that there was a real privilege in that, because we all take that long journey. And if somebody can help you walk those last couple of yards in comfort and dignity, then that's a pretty good thing.
It's a pretty good thing. Alan, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if you've got some of those issues and you want Alan to be of assistance, he's going to be here all the time. So goodbye for Counseling Solutions, and we'll see you next time.